Horses define the differentiation between the countries of America and Mexico throughout McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, as they are juxtaposed next to the mules of the Zacateros.
The mules passed on behind them, eyeing the horses in the road and switching their tails, although there seemed to be no flies in that country at all.
Horses represent animals of higher nobility than mules, becoming a symbol for America versus Mexico. The mules seem to become jealous of the horses as they are bothered without any bugs present to bother them. This divide between horses and mules sets up the division of America and Mexico. As John Kant explains, blood is a recurring emblem in McCarthy's work and signifies both life and death, each defined in relation to its inescapable other.
To McCarthy, blood symbolizes vitality and strength, as well as death and devastation. When considering these two themes, it is important to fully understand John Grady and his perception of life and death.
He lay in the dark thinking of all the things he did not know. So he thought about horses, and they were always the right thing to think about.
The circumstance in which this quote is derived from in the story illustrates the connection that Grady has with horses at the most complex level. John is contemplating two of the most important people in his life up to this point, his father and Alejandra. At this point in the story, Grady is recovering from his fight with the cuchillero and is on the border between life and death. He thinks about these two specifically because he's searching for a reason to keep fighting to survive. However, both fail to give him a reason to continue on, as they represent both pain and loss to an already beleaguered mind. Instead, Grady turns to the one thing that has been steadfast in his heart, a constant through all the struggle and adversity he has faced. Naturally, Grady thinks about horses in this time of need.
Instead of thinking of the possibility of death, he pictures horses. McCarthy describes Grady as wearing some sort of rough cotton gown. He'd bled through it, and the blood had dried. He favors alienating the border between life and death with a completely unrelated concept, and one consequently that means much more to him. True, blood is essential to living and breathing. However, John Grady's blood, his essence to life, is horses. Without them, he ceases to exist.
He would gladly give up his life, blood, body, and flesh in order to assure the well-being of his horses.
He was determined to get the 4 horses out of the stable yard if he died in the road, and beyond that he had not thought much.
Without horses, John Grady does not need blood. Without horses, John Grady is no longer alive. Life no longer has any purpose. Without horses, he might as well be dead.
Because John Grady loved to ride the horse. In truth, he loved to be seen riding it. In truth, he loved for her to see him riding it.
This is an example of the horses breaking a border between John Grady and Alejandra. He loves horses and knows that she does as well, so to impress her, he wants her to see him riding the horse, and his plan brings them together. He called his horse again and located the stall and opened the door and turned the horse out. The horse pushed his nose and forehead against John Grady's chest, and John Grady spoke to him, and he whinnied and he turned and went trotting toward the sunlight in the door without bridle or halter.
Rebdo, he called. The horse nickered at him from the far end of the stable.
Horses mean a lot to me because I think they share a special bond with people. And every time they always recognize people, and so when you get to know your horse, every time I walk into my barn, my horse is right there and he whinnies for me, which is really cute. I've heard a quote that says a horse doesn't care how much you know until he knows how much you care, which is totally true because they respect you, and they are even with you, and they're an escape for you.
He found he was breathing in rhythm with the horse, as if some part of the horse were within him breathing. and then he descended into some deeper collusion for which he had not even a name.
These two quotes show that there is no difference between a horse and a human. They are one and the same, and they recognize each other as their own. This represents the breaking of a border between the two species and the bond between them.
Horses are like my escape. They're kind of like my second world, and John Grady in All the Pretty Horses, he dreams of the horses as being his escape and being his paradise. And I feel like that's completely true because these horses, like, I can come here and nobody like bothers me, or nobody would say anything differently, and they can't talk back. So I feel like they're just kind of like a good companion to have, and I feel like the relationship that you have with a horse is basically like never ending. I don't think it would ever end. I wouldn't give it up for anything. I would do anything for my horses.
You know that I love you, boy. Hot like Mexico, rejoice. At this point, I've gotta choose nothing.